Hi, I'm Amy Willis with AdamSmithWorks, and this is the Smith Questionnaire.
Hi there, I'm Bob Chitester, and I guess most people know of me as the creator of Milton Friedman's Free to Choose TV series, but something they don't know likely is that I actually created, built, and for 16 years ran a public TV station.
Welcome, Bob. Thanks for joining us today.
Oh, it's good to be here.
So we have a series of 10 questions we're going to ask you, and we're just going to jump right in if that's okay with you.
Sure.
All right. Are you ready?
Yes, always ready.
Bob, would you rather be loved or lovely?
I would rather be loved because being lovely, now of course I know Adam Smith and the way he played with that, but my own reaction would be this. I'd rather be loved because in effect, lovely is something that it implies, well, I think of physically, and lovely there implies something I can't do anything about. Whether I'm lovely or not, in a physical sense, depends on somebody else. Now, in terms of being lovely, in terms of people liking me or appreciating the fact that I'm a decent person, then maybe I guess I still think I'd rather be loved.
All right. Next question. Wealth of Nations or Theory of Moral Sentiments?
Oh boy, that's a tough one because I've just spent a week fairly deep diving into the Theory of Moral Sentiments. And again, and I'm hedging a bit when I say this, but I think I would say theory in the sense of the two books, the one I would like more people to be aware of and to study and think about would be theory, because it shows that those of us who are engaged in trying to explain, get people to understand, and in that process hopefully come to agree that a free market capitalist system is the best for everyone. The problem is that it's so easy for people to confuse outcome with motive. In other words, if I don't agree with someone's approach, they then can assume, and they tend to assume, that I don't agree with them in terms of the goal.
Right.
And I think that Adam Smith's theory sets people up. In other words, I certainly would prefer they read that first and then read the Inquiry into the Wealth of Nations, simply because they would then start that book with an understanding that Adam Smith was not saying laissez-faire, nothing else matters except grabbing as much as you can.
Yeah. It's a cool answer because you would think most people, if we were talking about the defense of a market economy, would say, well, Wealth of Nations, we would rather have you read first.
Well, I think so.
All right, on to a very serious question. Are you ready?
Sure.
If Adam Smith had a dog, what kind of dog do you think he'd have?
Gosh. I could be funny and say, well, he was somewhat of a aspiring aristocrat, so he'd have a corgi. But no, I think in terms of his personality, he would want a utilitarian dog. He would want a dog that, the classic one being the Shelties, the sheepdogs, the collies, the or some dog, in the United States, a beagle is a classic one of a hunting dog. I think he would want a dog that had practical talents.
Not so much snuggly.
Not just, well, both, because most dogs, if you have a dog and it's a serious part of your family, you don't necessarily want the shepherd to jump up in your lap, but there is an affection.
Sure.
So I think there would be that, and I think he would want a dog that when he would go on his long walks, that he would have a dog that would be vigorous. And
he was known for those long walks, wasn't he? So.
Yes, he was.
All right. Bob, what do you pursue for pleasure that was once pursued for necessity? So Smith talks about things like hunting and fishing and so forth that have become pleasure activities.
Yeah. I do have an answer to that, but it's at the margin. The necessity part, I'm exaggerating a bit, because I think there are very few people in the United States that have really endured not having the necessities. We are coddled because we're so wealthy. Now, I was raised in a family that was not wealthy by anybody's standards. So I'm a little cautious in giving you this example, but having cautioned you, I'll give it to you. That I was married young at age 20 and had children rather quickly, and we were always scrambling to do the best we could. I was raised in a town, and my father, we had a fireplace, not a wood stove, but a fireplace, and we burned a lot of wood in the fireplace. So by the age of, when I was probably 8 or 9 or 10, I was hauling firewood, and by the age of 12 or 13, I was helping cut it. I only quit cutting firewood about 5 years ago when I moved off of the 22 acres that we own. Prior to that, but there was that period of time when I was cutting an awful lot of firewood just to reduce the cost of my heat, and struggling to do that. But then, for the rest of my life, I was cutting, if anybody knows anything about wood, I was cutting 8 full cord of firewood every year for probably 35 years.
I do know that's a lot.
That's a lot of wood.
Wow, that's a great example.
And I enjoyed it, and it was fulfilling. We once did a TV show that's about that. It's called Work and Happiness. Mm-hmm. And you gain happiness. If I could, let me tell you a story about Milton Friedman that I think relates to that. When Milton agreed to do the TV series, I then said, Milton, I want this. He gave us the answer in February of '77. I said, Milton, I'd like you to come to Erie, Pennsylvania, and I want to do a screen test. He agreed. Well, he came to Erie, Pennsylvania on Memorial Day weekend, and he came then because there was something going on in New York City, because he and I then got on a plane afterwards and went to New York for some activity with Bill Buckley. But he came to Erie, and what I had him do was go out in a garden and plant tomatoes, because I already had discovered he and Rose growing tomatoes. And when he did, I won't tell the whole story because it takes quite a long time, but he did this sequence, and as he's planting the tomatoes, he said, I really like to plant these tomatoes, because most of the work I do, I never get to see really whether it's having an impact, whether it's working. I plant these tomatoes, and this fall, and he turns to the camera and he says, I'm going to have these big juicy tomatoes, and I can make spaghetti sauce or whatever with them.
All right. Oh, that's a fun story. And in the back of my head, I'm trying to imagine Adam Smith at a what did you call it? A screen test.
Yes.
That would be fun. I wonder what he would have grown
That's right.
for his field test.
But what Milton did was then he spun it into a commentary. I just told him, plant the tomatoes, tell us anything you want about them. He spun it into a commentary about private plots in Russia doing such a great job.
Oh, wow.
It was great.
That's great. Okay, well, this might be a good follow-up question. So Smith says that one of the ways that we sympathize with others is to read or listen to the same the same piece of literature, the same piece of music, or something like that. So what should people who want to sympathize with you read, watch, or listen to? Besides free to choose.
Yeah, no. No, that wouldn't be it in a way. I'm going to ask you a question back. This is something they would read, not something they would read to me.
Correct.
All right, something they would read.
And it would help them to sympathize with you.
First of all, in terms of my personality, at this point, I'm not sure which because I don't remember the names, but I would have them read at least one volume of Dana Gioia's poetry.
Oh, nice.
To give them a sense that of my of the artist in me, if you would. Now, in a different way, in order for us, it's very hard. I guess contemporary right now, at this point in time, The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt.
Yeah, we just did a reading group on that. That's a great book. Yeah. All right, a couple more. What does your impartial spectator look like?
Me. Looks like me, and I am constantly having Robert chastise me. Now, maybe I'm being wrong, and maybe it's really my mom. Because one of the questions I ask people is, and that is that sometimes when I do things wrong, I will say out loud, Robert, and that's mom saying Robert. So I think maybe that's the more honest answer, although in effect the other is true also. And there's a certain sense in which I would have to go back and do some more deeper reading and careful reading to know whether Smith would have agreed that the individual, through the process, ultimately has to play the role of the impartial spectator. It's conscience in a way, but as I said, someone asked me, well, why is it different than conscience, your conscience? And I said, well, it's because you can sit in a room by yourself and your conscience is there. But it's very different when you perceive your conscience as someone else. So in that sense, maybe there'd be a different answer, but no, I'll stick with what I said.
I like that. That's interesting because I haven't heard an answer before where someone uses sort of both variants of their name, right? So I don't know what I just get Amy. I don't, Robert and Bob. So that's really interesting. Now I'm going to think about this when I ask people that question.
Yeah.
All right, here's our last question. If an afterlife exists, what would you like to talk with Adam Smith about when you get there?
Boy, that's a question. Come on, Bob. What would I like to talk to her about? What would be the first thing I would ask him? Yeah, I know. It's the favorite question I ask of people myself. Tell me what in your life stands out as your proudest moment. And I get some very interesting questions from her answers to that. John M. Oland, I asked him that question. That I didn't record, that was at a lunch. He said, nobody's ever asked me that. And then he proceeded to tell me his proudest moment was graduating from Cornell and getting his chemical engineering degree in a very short period of time because his father called and said, you must leave college and come help run the business. And he said, I was determined to get a degree, and he figured out a way to use what he had learned in another course to quickly sort through and be able to answer all the questions necessary in this other course and passed it. And And I think if you ask people, my proudest moment is probably in high school.
All right.
An unfettered, in somewhat maybe, I don't know, sophomore. In other words, I advised the music director to send another person to state band. We had both achieved first chair in our instrument at districts. The other young man had gone to state band before, so the music director was thinking maybe Bob should go. Now there's a backstory to this which I won't share with you, it takes too much time. But when he asked me that, I said, gee, that's easy. I said, Fred has worked his butt off to play the clarinet well. I've never taken the flute seriously. Send Fred.
I do believe that's lovely, Bob. Thanks for taking the time to join us.
It's been a delight, Amy.
Thanks.